All right, well, we're almost to the almost to where I think it's okay for us to begin. We wanted to wait until, give people about 3 minutes, but it feels like we're ready. And I just feel like we're ready to get started. So with that, I just want to welcome everybody to this webinar. And on behalf of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Administration for Community Living and Indian Health Service, I would like to welcome everyone to the Long-Term Services and Supports webinar series. My name is Anna Whiting-Sorrell. I work for Kaufman and Associates. Kaufman is KAI is an Indian-owned, woman-owned company that has been assisting CMS for a long time in doing this really important work across Indian country. And I'm going to be your moderator today, and on future webinars, I am also going to try to be that webinar so we have the continuity as we move forward. Today's webinar is titled Southcentral Foundation's Family Wellness Warriors Soldiers Heart Program. As we begin, I would like to highlight the main features of the Zoom webinar. So is there the next slide? Thank you for that. So first, the presentation slides will appear in the main window, while the speaker will appear on the top corner. At the bottom of the screen is the menu bar. Here you will find the chat, raise hand, questions and answers, or closed captioning features. And they're all featured on this slide right here, so you can see. Please use the chat box to report any technical issues you may be experiencing. We will respond to those concerns as they come in. And so we have some support people that are here working with us, and you can see them, Christina, Tom. So anyway, we're here to help you. Next to the chat box is the raise hand feature. You will be able to use this during the QA, the question and answer segment, to let us know when you would like us to unmute you, so unmute your mic so you can ask a question verbally. Another way you are able to submit a question is in the QA, question and answer box, which you see next, where you can leave your question in the chat box at any point during the webinar for the presenters, and we will address those questions at the end of their presentation. Lastly, in the fourth box there, you can see live captioning is available for today's broadcast. Simply click the CC icon to use this feature. Please know that today's webinar is being recorded, and that the recording will be made available online in the near future at cms.gov. I just want to reiterate that we are so happy that you're here. We welcome you to this session. It's such an important topic for all of us in Indian country that understand how we honor our veteran warriors and the role that they have played. We also would like to acknowledge that while this webinar series is supported by a contract awarded by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this webinar are those of the presenters and do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the Department of Health and Human Services or the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So with the next slide, we at Kaufman always like to begin in a good way our webinars, and it's while we know that it's important to center ourselves and to be very mindful and separate a little bit from the chaos that we find in the world. So we're going to open. I think I'm looking over my shoulder as my husband, Gene Sorrell, is going to provide us an opening in a good way. Gene is a tribal elder from the Salish tribe in northwest Montana, and a Vietnam veteran. He was awarded a war bonnet in 2015 and continues to serve the tribe through the Mission Valley Honor Guard and other positions. So with that, I'm going to ask Gene to take over.
Yes, Sinya Kuke, Lamlams, Kulin Sultan. We ask that you take and be with us this morning, this afternoon. Remind me of each and every day that I wake up, that I give thanks to the Creator, God, that I'm here to enjoy this day and ask for His blessings upon the many tasks that I have that He's laid out before me. And I ask that He blesses me, blesses my children, blesses my wife, blesses my family, and ask Him to watch over all of those who are sick. Special prayers I send to them. And today, I just ask that you take a few moments to reflect on your own life, the way that you woke up this morning. What was your feelings? How did they affect you? And just ask that, or just think about those that you wish to pray for. And as we light the smudge again, may those prayers then go to them. That who you are praying for, that the smoke carries your prayers, your thoughts in that direction to the individual who you're praying for. May they feel your presence and feel your healing spirit asking of them to watch over them, take care of them. May the eagle take and send your prayers and give them thanks. And I ask that the Creator blesses you today in your webinar and bless all of the veterans, as I have my veterans patch on here from Vietnam in 1967. I ask that the Creator watches over all my buddies that was in the service with me that came home, and those that are still there, Grandfather. I ask that our healing spirits watch over them, and may the eagle take and touch them and lift them up. Lem lems tu pie, pesia, se hoy.
We just moved to a new house, and I'm not sure that the smoke alarm wasn't going to go off. So, so with that, I would like we can move to the next slide. And I am really honored to introduce our presenters for today's workshop. They are from Southcentral Foundation. We have Polly Andrews, who is a learning and development training advisor, and John Paul Rudd, who is the learning development associate. So with that, I am going to turn this over to you guys and look forward to the great information that I know you're going to present to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Jean. Thank you for your service. Thank you for that. My name is Jean Paul Roulet. I'm a Learning and Development Associate at Southcentral Foundation Family Wellness Warriors Program. I've been at SCF for 5 years now. I am an Army vet. Spent time in Iraq in the late 2000s, and when I found this program, I jumped on board, and I've been working here ever since. So, and I'd like to invite Polly to introduce herself.
Hai waka huinga Pali Andrews chuhdun atcha na piriuk je whakamiungunga. Apa atcha ulran Billy Andrews outchu. Mauchlumashu Cecilia Andrews awuk. Koyana tangshlamji. My name is na piriuk. My English name is Pali. And I'm Chupik from the coastal village of Chivak, which is in western Alaska. And my grandparents are Cecilia Andrews and the late Billy Ulran Andrews. And today I am been with Family Wellness Warriors at Southcentral Foundation for 10 years. I'm a mom to 3 children, which is part of the reason why I'm woven into the work that we do and why I believe in it so much, just because of what it's meant and done for my family. And before I start, big Koyana Chaknak, thank you, Anna, and thank you to Jean for your service and for the beautiful blessing that you provided for us today. Next slide, please. So JP and I, we are here on Dena'ina land, and we just want to acknowledge this land as being Dena'ina, and that we are grateful for the Dena'ina people's past and present stewardship of the waters and the plants, animals, and spiritual practices of this place. Next. A little bit about what we will share today. We're going to talk a little bit about who we are and what the core philosophy of our program is, how we engage with community, how we foster connections, and we're going to talk about our approach to healthcare. And part of that is the power of story. So we'll be weaving in parts of our own story. So, and we'll also talk about Soldier's Heart and highlight the importance of what a peer-led experience can mean in a person's healing. Next. And before we go into Family Wellness Warriors, I wanted to talk about Southcentral Foundation. SCF has over 80 programs, and we serve 65,000 Alaska Native and Native American people who we call customer owners. And we're a large healthcare system. We are a Native community that enjoys physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. And our mission is to work together with the Native community to achieve wellness through health and related services. Next. Okay. And so our vision and mission is integrated into every part of our organization, especially our senior leadership. You can see right here our Southcentral Foundation Board of Directors. They are an all-Alaska Native board. They believe in the work that we do. They support the work of Family Wellness Warriors. And so we are creating better health outcomes for our people, and it's coming from our people. So our people chose to assume responsibility. In 1984, Southcentral Foundation began with a compacting agreement that provided only dental and optometry. And following that, Alaska Native people came together and worked with the federal government to take over ownership and management of the entire primary care and Alaska Native Medical Center. So this was our people assuming responsibility over our own healthcare and our system. And we know that there are better outcomes when it's our people leading the way. And the next slide is what that looks like today. So this is our campus right here. This is the result of tribal self-determination in action. And what you see here are 80 different programs serving 65,000 of our people. This is Alaska Native people leading in healthcare, taking responsibility for ourselves, our future, our families. And one thing I just want to say, you know, when I walk in for an appointment I see the faces of my own people. I see our artwork, our programs and buildings are named in our own languages. You walk in and you feel that this is what our people made, and this is Alaska Native people leading the way. And so one of the things woven into this big fabric of healthcare is family wellness warriors, and we address the emotional and spiritual wellness side of health. And how did that, come to be? First, it began with a conversation in the 80s. Our Alaska Native people they came together and we were talking about the things that harm our communities. And our people were talking about the child abuse, the domestic violence, and the generational trauma that was being passed down. And these were the things that our people wanted to address, our people wanted to heal. And so a group of Alaska Native leadership went on a search for different programs in the country that address those very things. And what they found in Michigan was a program called SALTS, which is Survivors of Abuse Leadership Training Seminar. And that program was about sharing our story and getting to the root of cause, which is our stories and the things that happen to us. And that program was about breaking the cycle of first breaking the silence and then breaking the cycle of generational trauma. So we took that philosophy, we brought it back here to our Native communities in Alaska. We culturally adapted it to our communities. It was designed and led by our elders and our people, and we have since developed our own curriculum. And since 1999, thousands of people have been through our trainings. Thousands of people have broken the silence of their stories and have begun the healing within their own families. So our goal is returning to the strengths of Alaska Native and American Indian culture to build healing relationships, community connection, and resiliency to trauma. And our name is Nuiju, which is a Dena'ina Athabascan word that was gifted to us, and it carries the meaning of returning to our true selves. And that is part of our Indigenous truth, that whole person healing is possible when we return to the ways of our ancestors, return to the ways of our grandparents, and all those good things that are part of our wholeness and our being. And those are the ways that have never left us. They've always been there. And so Nuiju, we recognize that it's our culture, our beliefs, our ways of life. Those things are our strength. Those things are our health and our resilience. And we're returning to those good ways through our programs, through our trainings, and through connecting with people. And we can't do this without our culture. And a big piece of who we are and our culture is our elders. We must recognize that Family Wellness Warriors, it was created and led by our Alaska Native people, many of them who were elders, who had a voice, who stood up, and they broke the silence. They shared the stories, and in that, they opened the door for the rest of us, the younger generation, to walk through that door so that we could have that courage to be able to break that silence and break those cycles within our own family. And it takes our elders to lead the way. And, in the trainings that we have our elders open every single time. We have our elders providing guidance and leadership. We have our elders sharing story within the learning circles. And that is so needed and so necessary part of what we do. And so one of the ways that healing is happening is that we are calling on our warriors. And so if we look back on ancestral times, guess who it was who was out there protecting our family and our village? That was our warriors. They were protecting all of us. And today we need our modern day warriors to stand up for us. And any one of us can be that warrior. That warrior is someone who fights for their family. That warrior is someone who fights for healing. And that warrior is the one who breaks cycles and leads the way in the family. And so that's one of the big ways that the healing is happening within the work that we're doing is calling on the warriors. One very important part of our philosophy is that we're dealing with the root issues. You know, I grew up in a home that had lots of domestic violence, addiction tore apart our family. Foster homes were very much a part of my upbringing and my rearing. And when I grew into adulthood, I thought, you know, all of that happened because of alcohol. But what I've since learned then, since I've shared my story and experienced these trainings, is that there was a root issue there. And that root issue is the things that happen to us, and it goes back to our story. And so in our trainings, we're focusing on the root source and not just the symptoms. The symptoms are the domestic violence and the alcohol and addiction and the harm and things like that. So we're looking at the root issues. Another thing that we recognize is that to truly break the cycle of abuse, we need to work with both sides, both those who have been harmed and those who have caused harm, because we recognize for many of us who grew up in a household full of harm and abuse, guess what? We grew into adulthood and we often modeled those things. We often carried forward those things. And I know that when I grew into adulthood and had my own children, you know, I carried some of that harm into being a parent, and it impacted my kids. It harmed my children. And so we're looking at what that looks like from the person who's been harmed and the person who's caused harm, because to heal the entire circle, to heal the entire picture, we need to be working with both sides. This is our conceptual model. And so you'll see the process right here of what happens during our trainings. And we have found that healing happens in stages. And you can look at this pyramid from the bottom up. If you look at the very bottom, first participants work to heal and understand themselves by sharing their stories. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the role of the peer leader. They're creating safety by modeling their stories and sharing first. And on the participant, they're sharing their experiences. And so next, the healing leads to increased, increased self-esteem and self-efficacy, which in turn helps participants build healthy relationships. And finally, they become able to support others and are able to use their own experiences to support the healing of others. So this is a model that in the very middle, you'll see the process of what the participant is experiencing. On the left, you'll see what the peer leader is, their role within the process. And next, I want to introduce or welcome back to us JP, who will be talking about how the program works and our different focus areas.
Yeah, so you heard Polly say earlier, part of our goal is to build resiliency to trauma. So we have our focus areas. So we serve people who've experienced childhood trauma or domestic violence, people who experience military or first responder service-related trauma, justice-involved individuals and families with the Office of Children involved with the Family of Office. Stumbling over my words today. Office of Children's Services. And what we'll talk about now is Soldier's Heart. So I'm going to start with the why, and then we'll move into what we do to support peer-led services that address post-traumatic stress. So an interesting fact, or an interesting thing, Alaska Native American Indians serve at the highest per capita rate of any population. So according to the National Indian Council on Aging, American Indians and Alaska Natives serve in the armed forces at 5 times the national average and have served with distinction in every major conflict for over 200 years. Considering the population of the US is approximately 1.4% Native, and the military is approximately 1.7% Native. Native people have the highest per capita involvement of any population to serve in the US military. When we're looking at that, I can share, this is my experience as well as the experiences of others that, they shared this experience with me. We joined the military and we get out of it, and I can't speak for the first responder experience, but I would imagine that in a lot of cases, it's the same. We join the military, we get out, we come home. We've gone for 3, 4, 10, 12, 20 years, whatever it is. It can feel pretty lonely, right? And it's not that the people at home have forgotten about you, they just learned how to live without you for however long you've been gone. And then when you start to factor in like cultural connection, I had a strong connection to my culture when I was a kid. I'm fleeing from Southeast Alaska, from Juneau. And then I joined the military and I adopt that culture, and that becomes my support system. I come back and I've got that cultural loss as well. So we're going to talk about suicide rates. There's been a 30% increase in suicide rates in veterans since 2001. When we look at the Alaska Native population or American Indian population, that we already have a higher suicide rate among Alaska Native American Indian people, right? So, it speaks to the fact that we need something that's delivering tools for resiliency for our people who are coming back with, post-traumatic stress. So this is some of the information on Alaska rural veterans, right? VA enrolled veterans is 34,000. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, we've got 65,000 in the state of Alaska. So roughly 30,000 people who have veteran status are not involved in the Department of Veterans Affairs. And that is due to likely in large part due to a bad reputation from the VA and not delivering great services. And it's tough. This is a difficult population to reach. I've done some recruitment and I have personal experience that can relate. But I can say from experience that this is a difficult population to get buy-in from the outreach stage. And then, so we also deal with first responders who have service-related trauma. And the first responders in Alaska they have unique dynamics, right? Especially when you get into like Alaska State Troopers, you can get a guy stationed in a place with a population of 100 people for 5 years, right? Versus you can have Alaska State Troopers stationed in the Mat-Su Valley, which has a population of, I said brain fart, over 100,000, right? Well, it's a pretty diverse experience you can have being a first responder in Alaska. And then you get into like village police safety officers, which are in the villages, and they're the law enforcement that oversees those places. And then we have CHAPs, right? And they're community health aid practitioners. And they're stationed in villages as well, and remote clinics run by other organizations. And we have some as well. So when you get into that rural situation, you're looking at people with a lot of repetitive exposure, right? To complex and compounding traumas. You have people responding to loved ones more often than not. You're dealing with higher suicide rates. Our suicide rates in our villages are a lot higher. You're also dealing with increased barriers to care, right? It takes a lot to travel to Anchorage from a lot of places to get care. And then few or inaccessible supportive services. So it gets a lot more difficult when this population is rural. So now I'm going to get into, Soldier's Heart and what we do, right? So Soldier's Heart is a peer-led program focused on helping combat veterans and first responders build resiliency to trauma. So we have a weekly learning circle. Anybody can join that, and that's where people can share their experiences, how things are going, or just check in. There's also a non-clinical training intensive that's 6 days long. We cover 10 modules. They're all related to post-traumatic stress, with both teaching and personal story as it relates to the topic. And then people go into small groups and process what they just took in. And it was started in 2015, right, by combat veterans and clinicians. Our organization saw the need, given the numbers that I was just talking about a couple slides ago, and the issues that this population faces. And so they put together a team of veterans and clinicians in 2015 and started to build this thing. And then in 2016, it was piloted. And to this point, we've roughly had 170 participants complete the training. We keep them fairly small. As a veteran dealing with stuff like hypervigilance and anxiety and stuff like that, if I'm walking into a training, it just feels more comfortable when it's smaller. So our goal is to reduce the symptoms of post-traumatic stress and aid in suicide prevention among those that serve their community in a military or first responder role on a local or national level. So I'm going to read a quote from a participant of ours, Mark Granda. This is what he got out of it. He said, "The program has also helped me realize that I wasn't alone, and that there were people like me who were experiencing the same things, and it helped normalize it, and that it was okay to reach out for help. The program helped me move towards being a better version of myself and helped me discover my resiliency." So the people who qualify for this training are veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, EMS personnel, VPSOs, village health aides, community health aides, and anyone that's serving in a first responder role in their community and experiencing symptoms of post-traumatic stress, service-related post-traumatic stress, on-the-job trauma. We do recognize that in rural areas, people like chaplains or people in other roles will serve as the first responders in their communities. One of the things that we've learned, which has been really cool, is that that if you have service-related trauma, typically it doesn't matter where that comes from. You can still relate to somebody else's experience, right? And my experience has been in the military and in combat, but when I get into a small group with somebody who's law enforcement or a firefighter, people who I thought, I would never be in a small group with, EMS personnel, when I'm sharing my experiences, they can understand, and when they're sharing their experiences, I can understand, and there's a common language there. So that's been a really cool part of doing Soldier's Heart and opening it up and not just making it a veterans program, which it initially started out to be. when it started out, it was a veterans program. We got a police officer who was a veteran, combat veteran, come through. And one of the things that he said was a lot of the stuff that he's struggling with is stuff that he's been seeing on the job as a police officer. So yeah, we opened it up, and that's one really cool thing that we learned from that. I will go ahead and jump into my story. So I grew up in Southeast Alaska. That's my family there. My mom on the bottom right, her husband top right, my brother on the far left, and my daughter center. I grew up in Southeast Alaska to a single mother. My little brother there, he's not so little anymore. He's taller than I am. We grew up in Southeast Alaska, and we moved around a lot. And I had a lot of fun. So I grew up fairly involved in my culture. I got to spend a lot of time at like D&B halls. I was talking to Polly the other day, and I'm looking back, and I was one of those like spoiled kids who was at all these like cool community events, rich with culture, and I'm just being a brat going, I wish I was home, right? No. But it was cool. It was a lot of fun, and I got to learn a lot, and got to really be. I got to start carving. I carved a lot of cedar paddles, plaques, masks. I got really kind of immersed into form line design in my early teenage years. And then when I was about 14, I moved to Anchorage. When I moved to Anchorage, I didn't really know anybody, or didn't know a lot, know the area, or, you know, I didn't have the lay of the land like I did in Southeast. So I got involved with junior ROTC and stuff like that, and got involved, and a teacher there was a really important role model to me. You know, I didn't have a father. I grew up with good male role models, but I didn't have any in Anchorage. And so he was a really good role model to me, and teaching me really good, important values. And so I respected that, right? I was in my early teen years, right? Or, you know, middle of my teen years. And I started making not so great choices. And I ended up, getting my girlfriend pregnant at 16 years old, a couple months before my 17th birthday. And on my 17th birthday, I went into the recruiter's office and started talking to him. And this was in 2005. I started bugging him about joining the military. And sorry, somebody keeps walking by the window. Started bugging him, and so we started to do paperwork, and I ended up joining the Army so I could take care of my girlfriend, my pregnant girlfriend at the time. And I left for basic training in February of 2006, about 5 months after my 17th birthday. And so I did some training there. I had a decent time. I would consider myself, you know, even in basic training, I was a fairly social kid, fairly social person. I enjoyed interacting with people. I got energy from it. It was a lot of fun. And so basic training, got my butt kicked, but made some really good friends. And I got to my first unit. And we were on a workup for a deployment to Iraq. When I first got there, and we were doing our thing, and I was, 17 years old. I couldn't deploy until my 18th birthday, but I was 17 years old looking at going to war for the first time. And I was standing in formation one day, and my phone was going off. It rang a bunch of times, and my girlfriend at the time was about 6 months pregnant, or 5.5 months pregnant, actually. And it was my mom. And I ignored the phone call. I was in formation doing my stuff. I didn't even look at it to see who it was. But my mom was calling me. She had called 12 times. And after I got off work, I answered I looked at my phone, and I had some voice messages, right? And the voice messages went, your Caitlin's gone into labor, and we don't know if Madison's going to make it. And then the next voice message was, we're at the hospital, she's giving birth. And then the next voice message was, your daughter's been born, and she's crying, which is a really good sign, especially that premature. And you can see she's alive and well. But I tell that part of my story to kind of illustrate how powerless we end up being when we're in those roles. I didn't get to go home. I was in Kansas, they were in Alaska. I didn't get to leave. We had to go through paperwork. I didn't get to go home for 2 days after that, right? And who knew? I had no idea what was going to happen in those 2 days. And then she ended up being fine. And then I went back. I only got to spend 6 days at home. And my total time in the military, the 3 years I spent in the military, I was home a total of, I think, 22 days in that 3 years. So, yeah, that's a tough one. And when I went to Soldier's Heart, after the military, I isolated a lot. I came home and I didn't know how to reconnect with my family. I didn't know how to reconnect with my culture. I had a tough time. Reconnecting, period. I had all these experiences, my experiences in combat. I just didn't know how to do it. And yeah. So I isolated a lot. I ended up getting pretty decent jobs. I worked on the slope for a long time. I worked in mining, but these are camp jobs. We're in the middle of nowhere. Typically work alone or with one other person, right? And they were good for me. Until I lost my eye and I couldn't work those jobs anymore, right? It's there are laws in place, right, with vision and requirements and stuff. So couldn't work those jobs anymore. And that having to work in the city and feeling those losses, right? I couldn't blame it. Oh, I work remote. That's why I'm not connected to my family anymore. I work remote. That's why I'm not connected to my culture anymore. Too busy working. I didn't have those excuses anymore. And that stuff started sinking in. And then I got to attend Soldier's Heart in January 2018. When I started working at Southcentral Foundation, and I had, right, this thing isn't like a cure, but I had a group of people that could understand my experiences, both in combat and just the regular day-to-day stuff that you deal with in those roles, right? But I got to connect with people in a very powerful way, and not feel stuck and alone, and have people that check on me when when they're worried about what I'm doing, and people that I get to check on and people that I get to communicate with. So yeah, I don't get to, one of my favorite things that I heard at Soldier's Heart was, you don't get to do this anymore, right? And it's coming from a peer, like that was a powerful message to me, because I don't get to isolate anymore. I don't get to disconnect anymore, which was really cool. So we'll talk about the actual Soldier's Heart experience. Oh, sorry. I keep thinking I'm driving this. So the training intensive experience, right? So we've got large group teachings. They're typically 30 to 40 minutes, and there are topics like trauma triggers, survivor guilt, or anger and self-destruction. So 20 minutes is done in a teaching. There's 10 sessions. 20 minutes is done in a teaching, and then 20-minute story as it relates to that topic. And then they'll move from that large group into a small group, which is about a 2-hour small group where they're processing the information that they just took in. The training experience itself is about 3.5 days. And then we have a 2-day retreat, which I'll get more into here in a little bit. So I'll stop driving this, sorry.
So we're getting close to the end of the hour. So JP, just to let you know that time.
Yeah, I'm about to wrap up here in a little bit. Okay. I'll drive the PowerPoint. So layers of safety, right? We've got important layers of safety that help get into this. So all training intensives have a basic model of creating and keeping safety, right? We've got the participants in the center. We've got learning circle leaders, which are peer leaders. They're people who have gone through the training intensive before. We've got Aria House, which deals with childhood stuff, and Soldier's Heart, which deals with veteran stuff. And then they go through our advanced leadership education and training, which is our group leader training. That's 3 days. And then we've got learning circle coaches, which are seasoned learning circle leaders who attend our coach training, and they're there to support our learning circle leaders, as well as come in the group and help resolve conflict if necessary. And then we've got care team, which are licensed clinicians who are there to support everybody. And then we've got SCF as a whole. This is our, sorry, the PowerPoint's acting up for some reason. That's weird. So this is our process roadmap. We've got 4 stages of group. We've got the beginning stage where there's a lot of emphasis placed on safety and building a relationship, right? The story stage is where learning circle leaders are encourage participants to share their 10-minute story. And then resistance begins to be challenged in subtle ways. The working stage of learning circle is characterized by a deeper level of exploration, specifically how harm is impacting them and those close to them. During the closing stage learning circle, the goal is to prepare participants for continuing their journey. Hope and process the change. Hope and the process of change are explored. So the depths, the story, we ask people to share their story as it comes to them, as they're exploring it in small group, or but the depth is up to them, and our responses, we respond at the appropriate level. Let's see, there we go. So the Soldier's Heart community, one of the cool things that happened as a result of doing Soldier's Heart, it was an unintended benefit, was the community that results afterward. You've got guys who attend this training that stay connected for years. I went through in 2018 And my hunting partners are people that I went through this training with. You see this picture here. This is a picture on what's called Matt's Mountain. We've got a Gold Star mom that comes and shares story at our Soldier's Heart event. And we had a retreat out of a place called Silver Salmon, and it was a beautiful location. Behind the lodge that we used to stay at is this mountain, and at the peak we planted this flag for Matt, and every year we used to go up and change that flag. And we've got oh, this is where I shifted back to Polly. Sorry.
Yes, and this is the learning circles. We offer them every day across our health campus, and there are opportunities for people to connect and share their story in that safe environment, like JP was talking about. Next slide. Almost done here. I think we want to leave some time for questions, and so I wonder if we should go ahead and hop to how to request our model. Let's see, next slide.
So Polly, we don't have any questions in the chat box yet. And so unless someone, wants to be unmuted, before that though, I want to thank both of you for the wonderful, wonderful, heartfelt presentation that you've made, and the depth of the sharing that you have provided us today, and the wonderful successes that we get to experience, the joy and the hope that you represent. So this is our time for questions. If there's any there, and there are none in the chat box. So if someone would like to raise their hand, and you could be, then you could be recognized. So are there any questions? Christina or Tom, are there anything that you're seeing, or anyone that wants to offer a verbal question?
I'm not seeing any just yet.
Okay. And Tom, is anybody asking to be brought off mute to ask a verbal question?
None that I'm seeing, not yet.
All right. Well, let's just be patient for a minute or so, and then see if someone does want to, would like to ask one or has one. You can certainly put it in the chat box. We're monitoring the chat box, so if you'd like to add it there.
And there is a question in the Q&A there. Somebody asks, I may have missed this. Are the group meetings in person or offered virtually as well?
So the training intensive is in person, but our learning circles are hybrid. So we have a screen in the room that is connected to Zoom. I believe the next slide is the QR code to our webpage. There are flyers on there, and that learning circle is both virtual and in person, which actually works out fairly well. It's surprising how well that works. There's also the application. If you follow that QR code, that's the Solar Sharp webpage. There's an application to attend Soldier's Heart. So if you or someone you know wants to attend Soldier's Heart, they can fill out that application to attend. And then the learning circle is open to all veterans and first responders, active or prior service.
All right, any other questions? Well, with that, I want to again thank Polly and JP for joining us today and for providing us this wonderful, wonderful program and their stories, the Soldier's Heart program. In closing, I'd like to remind everyone that today's webinar was recorded and the audio and presentation of slides will be available soon on cms.gov. Thank you again. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. And with that, our session is concluded.